Welcome to our webinar. My name is Carrie Mahoney, and I'm from the ARC of Massachusetts, and I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. Before we begin and I introduce our presenters, I just wanted to run through a couple of things to make your webinar experience a good one. Make sure you can all hear me. You've all been muted upon entry, and that is because we record this session and it makes for better sound quality. So hopefully most of you have been on a webinar before. If you're having any problems either with your audio or the screen, the best thing to do is really to log off and log back on, and typically things just get resolved. So welcome, and I'd like to welcome our presenters, which is Carly Berry, and she is from the New York Census Center, and also Ellen Taverna, who is our policy officer here at the ARC of Massachusetts, and Ellen's spearheading the census counts for, and you know, we just wanted to educate everyone about how important this really is for people with disabilities. I never realized it myself until I found out what it does count with us. So we'd love to find out who's in the audience just briefly. So if you could just chat into me and about, are you a parent? Are you a professional? That would be really helpful.
I guess I'll start. My name is Tom Erhardt. I'm a parent. My son lives in a group home, and I want to make sure that he's counted in the census as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Lucy Chansky, a parent and a professional special education advocate, a longtime advocate for people with intellectual disabilities.
Terrific. Thanks, Lucy. We have here Melinda Andre from the Mayor Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Welcome. And Lisa, she works at LifeWorks as a community resource specialist. Anybody else want to chat in? Sybil, Director of Day and Administration Services at the Berkshire County ARC. Herb Cabral, parent, and also works with us at the ARC of Massachusetts and HMEA. Alex from VinFed, Friendship Home, Gina from Friendship Home in Norwell. Anyone else?
I'm not sure you can hear me. This is Henry Malone.
Hi, Henry. Yep.
I'm also with the Disability Commission from Medford, Massachusetts, and also parents.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Nancy, Mass Kids Count, Director at Mass Budget, and a parent of a young adult who lives in a group home. Terrific. Terrific. Margaret. Hi, Margaret. You're a parent. Amelia, Director at Friendship Home. All right. Anybody else that we're missing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Who's that?
Oh, this is Janice Herlihy, and I'm with the, I'm on the board of the ARC in Greenfield, and I just want to mention that I'm on the advocacy subcommittee, and we actually are doing a census project where we're going to have resources to help people, if needed, to complete their census. So we're going to do that in March. So that's why I'm here today.
Great, great. Well, we have a terrific audience here. I'm excited. So generally what we do is with our webinars is we leave questions till the end because that way, you know, your question might be addressed in the next slide. So we want to make sure we get through our presentation and we will have plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to have Carly take it away.
All right, great. Thank you, and thank you all for calling in. So I'm just gonna, like I was introduced, I work for the Census Bureau. I work out of the New York regional office, but I'm actually local here to the ARC of Massachusetts office in Waltham. So I'm just going to kind of go over the census and what to expect, and then Ellen's going to talk more about how the census can make sure everyone in the disabled community is counted. There we go. So the Census Bureau is the largest statistical agency in the United States. Our main goal is to provide quality data about the nation's people and economy. A lot of people wonder what we do between each of the decennial census, and we actually run 130 different surveys and programs. And this slide just shows you a list of a few examples. Some that you may be, or one that you might be most familiar with is the American Community Survey. That's an ongoing survey that gets sent to a small portion of the population every month. And some of you may also remember that the census used to have a long form and a short form. The decennial census no longer has the long form, it only has the short form, and essentially the American Community Survey is kind of like the long form. And so between those two surveys, we really get a good picture of what our population looks like. We mention this too because we want everyone to be aware that the Census Bureau is out and about all the time. It's just we only get any attention every 10 years. So some of you may feel like, oh, someone visited my home last year and I already filled out the census, or maybe you got the American Community Survey last month and you already filled it out. None of those things are the decennial census. No one has filled out the decennial census yet, and no one will be able to until March, which I'll talk about the schedule later. But that's just to let you know that, you know, we are out there, we are in the community doing all these other surveys. So if you feel like you've maybe already filled out your census, you haven't. The other thing to keep in mind in Massachusetts is the state does a town and city census, which you probably all just got this month in the mail. And that is also not the federal decennial census. So this year in 2020, you'll fill out two census, one from your town or city in January, and then the federal one in March or April. We were also out in the field last fall in August through October. We were doing address canvassing, which is an operation to prepare for this 2020 census. Additionally, we are very aware that scams and frauds are an issue. So we've set up this hotline and website for anyone to call in and report something fraudulent that they believe they maybe got in the mail or got a phone call or someone visiting their home who they do not believe is part of the census. They can report those things to this hotline. So the goal for the 2020 census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. We are estimating to count 330 million people this census, which is a huge endeavor, and that's why we're out talking to folks like yourselves to make sure that everyone is aware and can help us get a complete and accurate count this year. As many people know, the census is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. It happens every 10 years, and the first one was in 1790. The census, it helps determine representation and funding based on population. So really what we want to emphasize this year is that the census is safe, easy, and important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those things. So it's important because it determines the seats in the House of Representatives for each state. It also helps us define state, congressional and state legislative districts. And really what catches people's attention is it helps us determine how $675 billion is allocated, federal funding is allocated every year. So that federal funding is for infrastructure and social services. Infrastructure being roads, schools, libraries, senior centers, things like that. And social services, there's a list here on this slide, but it could go on and on. Things like SNAP, WIC, school lunch programs, Section 8 housing, things like that. The other thing that's really important to remember is that this is our benchmark for the next 10 years. We don't get to do a count again next year. We don't get to try to get a better count next year or anything like that. So that's why it's so critical to get a good count every census, is because these are the numbers we're going to be working with for the next 10 years. It's safe. The other thing the census really wants everyone to be aware of is how important we take confidentiality. So everyone's individual data is completely confidential. It's protected under Title 13 of the U.S. Code, and that law says that we cannot share individual census data with anyone else, including other government agencies such as ICE and the FBI. That has been tried in the federal court system and has always been upheld. Essentially, that means that it would take an act of Congress to change that law. Every Census Bureau employee, including myself, takes a lifetime oath to protect anyone's individual census data. And if we were to violate that, we could face federal prison sentence, $250,000 fine, or both. And we really just mention that to emphasize how important it is that confidentiality is to the Census Bureau. The other thing we are also on top of is cybersecurity. So I'm not an IT expert and I can't go into all of the things that the Census Bureau is doing, but they have been working on this extensively every single day for the past 10 years to ensure that everyone's cybersecurity is protected. I can confirm that your census data goes directly onto a census server that's housed. That's just your feedback. That's housed. No, that's right. That's housed within the Census Bureau domestically here. So it never goes on a cloud. It never gets shared anywhere internationally. And finally, it's easy. So this is the first year we can respond online, by phone, or by paper. Those three ways are what we consider self-response, and those are the best and most accurate ways that we can get a response for the census. If someone does not respond using one of those three methods, then a person from the Census Bureau will become visiting your door to collect your census information. The census form is very short. It has about 10 questions that are listed here on this slide. It includes name, age, date of birth, race, origin, relationships within the home. So for example, roommates or mom, dad, brother, sister, grandma, grandpa. It also asks for gender, whether you rent or own your home, and then some operational questions just to double check that everything on your census questionnaire is accurate. So like, how many people live in the home altogether? It does ask for your phone number in case there's any questions for a follow-up over the phone versus in person. Back to our scams, some things that we will never ask for are your social security number, money, or your bank account information. So if you see any forms that are asking for that, or if you meet someone who says they're a census taker and says they'll collect your information for $5, that's a scam. So just keep on the lookout for those. Another really exciting thing we have going on this year is a language support program. So online and by phone, you can respond in these 12 non-English languages. That plus English covers about 99% of our population. Online, you can toggle between languages to select the language that you would like. For the phone option, each language will have its own phone number, so you don't have to spend time on a phone tree, and you can respond to the census in the language of your choice by calling that phone number. You will speak to a human who speaks that language and can respond to the census that way. This slide talks about those 12 languages that I was just talking about, and then additionally in that big square in the middle, there is additional online guidance for up to 59 non-English languages. So the form is not in all of those languages, but there is online video guidance and online written guidance in all of those languages on how to respond to the census, the English form of the census. Paper questionnaire is available in Spanish and English only. And so and then additionally, some of our mailings will be sent out in Spanish and English as well.
That's a language.
So could we keep the phones muted until the end of the presentation for questions? You can just make sure that your phone is muted, your computer's muted. Thank you.
So if you live in an area that the census has designated as having a high Spanish-speaking population, then your mailings will also be received in both Spanish and English. This slide talks about what to expect for the census. So this is the schedule of what to expect in the mail. Between March 12th and March 20th, everyone will receive an invitation in the mail to invite them to respond to the census online or by phone. Then there will be a reminder letter that everyone will also receive. After that, if you have responded to the census, then you will no longer receive any mailings and no one will be visiting your door to collect your census information. If you haven't yet responded, then you can see on the schedule between March 26th and April 3rd, you'll get a reminder postcard. And then the next reminder letter will also include a paper form, the paper questionnaire. So if your preference is to fill out paper questionnaire, you may have to wait until that 4th mailing to receive that paper questionnaire. Then one final mailing is sent out at the end of April, a reminder, and after that, we will have census takers out collecting information door to door. So starting in May, typically. There are some special circumstances with the mailings. For example, if you live in an area that the census has designated as an area that has low internet access within the home, you may receive a paper questionnaire in the first mailing. Additionally, if you live in an area that has a high amount of off-campus housing near a college or university, door-to-door census takers will be out early, starting in early to mid-April, to collect census information to make sure we capture those college students before they leave for school. So what we are hoping that you all can help us with is really to share that message that the census is safe, easy, and important, and also to help us promote jobs. So in the state of Massachusetts, we are trying to hire tens of thousands of people from within each community. That's our recruiting goal. So we need that many applicants, knowing that there's attrition when we call to actually get people on board. Most of those positions are for our enumerators, which are census takers that go door to door, but those jobs are part-time and flexible. The pay is very good, but is also dependent on which county you live in. So if you live in the Boston metro area, Suffolk County, Middlesex, Essex County, the starting pay is $27.50. And I don't know off the top of my head some of the other counties, but if you have questions specifically about that, I can help get you that information. People who are interested can just go to this website right here to apply for those jobs. And they just fill out one application for all the jobs that are available. One last thing that I'll talk about before Ellen takes over is some of our key milestones. So in August, we launched our Statistics in Schools program, and this is a program available online to everyone. And for educators, it includes lesson plans for all ages K through 12, as well as some adult English second language learners. It also includes lesson plans for all subjects within school. And it's just, they're not curriculum or anything like that. A lot of educators I've talked to said they're really great sub-plans. If you're interested in that, you can visit this website, census.gov/schools, and get more information. This month, we're starting to see our advertising campaign launch. So you're going to start seeing, if you haven't already, some billboards, radio ads, TV ads coming out about the census. In March begins our group quarter enumeration, and Ellen's going to talk a little bit more about that later. In mid-March, we can all start responding to the census, and then April 1st is Census Day. So that's the day that we really want to celebrate the census and try to get everyone on board. It's also a day that the census is truly asking, where do you live on April 1st? So even though you can respond to the census for several months, the question is truly, where do you live on April 1st? Then in mid-May through July, we'll have census takers going door to door. The end of July is the last time you can respond to the census, and that's the end of the operation. After that, we spend time tabulating all of the results, compiling everyone's individual data into statistics, and those are released to the president by December 31st of 2020. So with that, Ellen will take over.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about how the census impacts the disability community, and the importance of an accurate count for the disability community. According to the Centers for Disease Control, 61 million adults in the United States live with a disability. So that's about 26% of the US population. So it's vital that we have a fair and accurate census count for people with disabilities. And Carly touched on this earlier, but I just want to emphasize the point that the census data is used to calculate how much federal funding the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and our local governments get for programs like Medicaid, which has more than 11 million people with disabilities enrolled on it. And it's the main health insurer for adults and children with disabilities. Also, it funds housing programs, or sets the data that funds housing programs that develop affordable and accessible housing for people with disabilities, the vocational rehabilitation programs, which provide services for people with disabilities pursuing employment opportunities, and educational grant programs for services for students with disabilities. And in fiscal year 2016, Massachusetts received about $23 billion through 55 federal spending programs guided by the data that was derived from the 2010 census. And when there isn't enough money for services and programs for people with disabilities, these programs can be cut. So it's really important that we get the word out about the census. Thank you. For participation of people with disabilities in the 2020 census, the Census Bureau has made assurances that every self-response mode for the census in 2020 will be fully accessible. And under Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, this requires that all federal agencies, including the Census Bureau, make their electronic information technology accessible to all people with disabilities. And the Bureau has conducted checks to ensure the system is in compliance with Section 508 standards. There are going to be Braille and large print guides that will be available to respondents to assist with self-response. Carly had mentioned the many different languages that the census will be provided. They will also be available in the American Sign Language video guide as well. And as a part of the census questionnaire assistance operation, the Census Bureau's telephone call centers will utilize a telephone device for the deaf technology, and this number will be included on the postcards mailed to every household. Another thing we want to discuss is the Census Bureau and how it counts people with disabilities that live in group facilities through the group quarters operation. So what does group quarters enumeration mean? Group quarters are places where people live or stay in a group living arrangement. These places are owned or managed by an entity or organization that provides housing and or services for the residents. These services may include custodial or medical care, as well as other types of assistance. And the residence is commonly restricted to those receiving those services. This is not a typical household living arrangement. People living in group quarters are usually not related to each other, but of course they could be. Group quarters enumeration is a census operation that counts people that are living in these group living arrangements. Group quarters can include nursing facilities, residential treatment centers, college, university student dormitories, prisons, military barracks, shelters for people experiencing homelessness, vocational training facilities, and group homes. People living in group quarters do not self-respond in the typical ways that Carly's previously described online, by phone, or by mail. Instead, the census field staff collects data using a special group quarter enumeration method. So are group homes considered group quarters? Group quarter enumeration can sometimes be challenging for group homes. As I mentioned previously, generally if a group home is owned by an entity or if the residents of the group home receive services on site, it's typically counted under the group quarters operation. And this may not be as obvious as other type of group quarters that we listed. And it's based on information that's been previously gathered by the census. If it doesn't fall into the category of a group quarter, then it will most likely be contained in the general public census. There's always exceptions to the rule, and this is whether it's a group quarter will be determined on a case-by-case basis by the census. And I'll talk a bit about the process in the next slide. But ultimately, the most important takeaway that we should remember is that everyone should be counted where they sleep and live most of the time. So some will be counted through the group quarters and others will be counted everywhere else. Okay, so what's the process for group quarters enumeration? Starting in February, the census staff will contact group quarter administrators ahead of time to set up an agreed upon date, time, and preferred method to collect the census information. And the designated contacts at the group quarter could be a manager, director, administrator, or another contact person in the group housing. And there are 5 options for collecting the data. You could submit an electronic file, submit a paper file. You could have a census taker come to the place of residence and collect the data directly from each individual. You could train a staff at the residence to collect the data directly from each individual. You could request a paper questionnaire for each individual to complete and then arrange a time for the census to collect the form. And then starting in April, the field staff will complete the group quarters enumeration using whichever method that the residents determined was the best. And as mentioned by Carly earlier, the many attempts for reaching people, and this goes on through the month of July. So what are some possible 2020 census challenges for people with disabilities? And much of this information that I've gathered is from a brief that was done by the National Disability Action Network, and we'll have that brief that will be on the ARC of Massachusetts website, which I'll explain later. But people with disabilities are considered hard to count populations, and therefore they face a higher risk of being undercounted. So this means that communities where these people live face a higher risk of losing federal funding and not having accurate representation. So some people with disabilities may feel reluctant to participate in the census. There is anecdotal evidence that suggests that people with disabilities may be suspicious of the government or concerned that personal information will be used to determine their eligibility for government programs. Individuals with a mental health history, for example, may strongly mistrust federal authorities due to past experiences of involuntary treatment or the criminalization of behavior and circumstances associated with their mental health condition. Other possible challenges are that people with disabilities, they're also disproportionately likely to be part of another hard-to-count population. Disability is prevalent among racial and ethnic minorities who have been undercounted in the census historically. A quarter or more of American Indians and Alaska Natives and Black adults have a disability. Similarly, a quarter or more of individuals experiencing homelessness have 1 or more disabilities. The LGBT community and people with low income are also more likely to be living with disabilities. And about 19% of people with disabilities live in areas that are considered hard to count. So how can we help ensure that people with disabilities get counted? And there are many ways that individuals, organizations can get involved in the census, and Carly's described some already. As a trusted community member, the ARC of Massachusetts and our 17 chapters can directly engage with people with disabilities and their families, as well as direct support professionals and other provider organizations to share the importance of an accurate census and encourage participation. And that goes for everyone participating in this webinar today. We can play an important role in reassuring people with disabilities and their families about any census concerns, including those that are undocumented or who distrust or fear government employees. Organizations may, for example, encourage and support the hiring of people with disabilities as census takers, as Carly already described. The ARC of Massachusetts has joined the Massachusetts Statewide Complete Committee, which is a group of, it's a broad range of civic and community leaders who are raising awareness about the 2020 census. And we're also members of the Differently Abled subcommittee within the Complete Count Committee. And as a partner to the Census Bureau, we will get timely updates about the 2020 census operations, as well as promotional and educational materials and information about events planned throughout the state. And we'll be sharing that information throughout the time of the census. On our website, we encourage everyone to take the pledge to be counted and to educate your community about the importance of the 2020 census. We have a link for the pledge and all of our resources about the census, as well as information from the Census Bureau and the Complete Count Committee that can be found on arcmass.org/census. In addition, the ARC of the United States has prepared materials in English and Spanish that will help support individuals and organizations in understanding what the census is and how to complete the census. And that's also available on our website. So finally, we really encourage you to share information about the census with your family, friends, colleagues, staff, clients. Share it at meetings, include materials and reminders about the census at all of your meetings and calls and events that you've already scheduled or are planning. Excuse me, even just a brief reminder at the beginning of a meeting can really help build awareness. The ARC will be posting reminders and information about the census on social media, and we encourage you to repost and forward our resources and reminders as widely as possible. And these are a list of all of our links, our social media links for the ARC. And we'll go back to Carly for a bit.
Yeah, so just kind of a reminder of where we're at. These are our different phases for the census. So we're kind of wrapping up the education phase, but at the same time still doing a lot of educating about the census and how important it is. But really we're in the midst of our awareness phase. So making sure everyone knows the census is coming, what to expect, and how important it is that we get a full and accurate count. Then starting in March through May will be our motivation phase, making sure we can get as many people to self-respond using the online, phone, or paper method to respond to the census on their own. And then starting in May through July will be the reminder phase, our census takers going out to knock on doors and make sure everyone has gotten their census completed. And then we do go back at the end and thank all of our partners and thank all of you for helping us with this huge endeavor that we're facing this year. This is where you can find the census. We are on all the social media platforms as well. So if same with what Ellen, if you see something that you like, feel free to post or repost. And we also have social media materials available that I can share the link with Ellen too, that you can pull your own pictures and things from us if you want to post your own things about the census. You're welcome to do so. And here's our contact information. So just a little bit on how our staff works is there's about 28 of us in the state of Massachusetts. So feel free to contact me, but I may refer you to someone in your local area, one of my colleagues that would be better suited to help you with any census needs in your area.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Carly, and thank you, Ellen, for just a really informative webinar today and on the census. And I'm just going to check out the chat pane to see if there's any questions. Everybody who registered today will get a copy of the presentation emailed to you, and we've also recorded this, so you will have in probably about a week and a half a link to our YouTube channel. I'm really excited that this is available. So anybody want to chat in a question? Herb said, will the presentation PowerPoint be available? Yes, it will. So critical for people with disabilities. I'm excited that people are really collaborating. Yeah. It seems, I don't remember the census 10 years ago. Yeah.
No, hardly anyone does.
Did we have as much collaboration or?
Well, I mean, having it online, I think, is new. And
that's so that's new. All of our language support is new. The call option is also new. We did it. It just wasn't as. I think back to every 10 years, the U.S. is in such a different state politically, economically, that every census is kind of a new ball game.
Yeah, that makes Total sense. Okay. So Nancy's asking a question. Counting kids in residential Chapter 766 schools. I understand that they are counted in a group. Hold on, I got to go up and scroll up here.
Yeah, there's two questions just popped up.
Okay, and in group quarters, but other kids in boarding schools are counted at home.
Yeah.
That's true. So they're under 8. They're probably under 22.
Yeah.
Live in a public school.
So
Yeah.
kids living, residing at their boarding school will be counted under the group quarters operation. If they're day students, then they will be counted at home.
All right. Great. Thank you.
That answers that question. Yeah.
Clarifying. Okay. And then Alexandra, Adria, what info should we be providing staff on when and if they can support the people that they serve to fill out the census form, both for group home instances and for staff in outpatient non-housing programs? Good question.
So there are fact sheets that the ARC of US has already developed. It's in English and Spanish that focuses on how individuals can fill out the census form, and then it also does one on organizational information about the census. And we'll have that. It'll be, if it's not already up on our website, we'll have it on our website. That's in the web page that I had shown earlier, the ARC of Mass.org.
And I think what you told us too, Ellen, was it's really where you sleep.
Right. I mean, that's the big takeaway. I think
where you live and sleep.
Right.
Yeah,
group quarters enumeration is a little confusing, but understanding that where you reside most of the time, that is where the census will be filled out.
Yeah. So the goal for the census is to count you where you live and sleep most of the time. And obviously there's always instances that come up. So just to provide some examples, if you had a second home, you want to be counted where you live and sleep most of the time. If you truly live in both homes 50% of the time of the year, 6 months there and 6 months here, then you want to be counted where you are on April 1st. Same with a kid who has shared custody between divorced parents. If you want them to be counted where they live and sleep most of the time. If custody is truly 50-50, you want them counted where they live and sleep on April 1st. So it does take some coordination. It takes some thinking about it. Ellen has tons of information available on their website. The Census Bureau also has a lot of information, including information about accessibility for persons with disabilities, as well as the group quarters information. So I've pointed Ellen to a lot of those places, so one of us can help you find that information.
Great, thanks, Carly. Okay, and Mary, my sister lives in a group home. Looking at the town census form, what should we put under occupation for a disabled person that attends a workshop program, but a household has no formal job?
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I would suggest contacting your town or city clerk for that answer.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Lashmi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Is the 210 census for people with disabilities in Massachusetts available online? And is the census available in each city, for each city?
You mean the form? Is that?
Oh, I think though that the report on the 210 census.
Okay.
So the 2010 census information, all census information is public. So like I said, not your individual data, but our compiled statistics are public for all the different surveys that we do. So you can go on to census.gov to find some of those information. If you're having a hard time finding some specific information you're looking for, we do have a data dissemination program that hosts webinars and online trainings that can help you find any information you're looking for, which is particularly helpful for folks who write a lot of grants, I believe. So, great.
And we'll try to have as much Massachusetts-specific information up on our webpage as well.
Great. Okay, Alexandra, in normal circumstances, it's my understanding that third parties cannot assist anyone in filling out census form because it's confidential information. But it seems that in a group home circumstance, staff may be required to facilitate. Can you clarify this? Additionally, is there any differentiation for a person who has a legal guardian?
So, most of this is correct. So we do not encourage folks to fill out the census form for other people. That's a very broad statement. Mostly what our concern is making sure that everyone's data is confidential. So if you say you were to go, your local library is going to host a response event to try to, get a lot of people's attention and get a good response in their community. Most likely they will have census staff there to assist people in completing the census. So like I mentioned before, I took that lifetime oath to protect myself, and all census employees have that to protect ourselves from, any information leaks or anything like that. So that's primarily why we don't encourage other folks to be filling out the census for someone else. Because there are a lot of community organizations out there that say, hey, I know all these people, I'll just take care of it. And we don't want that to happen. As far as your guardianship goes, if your person that you're filling the census out for lives within your home, that is totally within the realm of, what you're supposed to do. So it's one census form per household. So we actually encourage one person to be taking the charge and leading that. That also, if your person that you're talking about is living in a group home that is not under the group quarters operation, it does take some coordination. That would kind of look more like a roommate situation. And we want all of those persons to kind of come together and complete one census form together. If they're in a group quarters that it falls under our group quarter operation, then those folks most likely will not, there's a good chance they will not be filling out the census themselves. Someone on the administration for that group home will be collecting the census data for them or using a census taker to collect that information from the residents, if that's the choice that they decide would be the best method for that home. Does that cover it?
Okay, terrific. All right, let me just see if there's any other.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, can you identify who you are?
Oh, yeah, this is Janice Herlihy.
Okay, thanks, Janice.
And my question is something we had talked about on our committee. The Department of Developmental Services, they have a number of people who they call unassigned or inactive. And we were thinking they might be a group that would be, might tend not to complete the census. So they receive no services, but they have a disability and the department, knows a little about them. So I just wondered if there was any effort to kind of reach those people or to support them in any other way than what, every other citizen, is supported.
I mean, there's no formal plan to do that, but we certainly encourage everyone to use our resources to share with as many people that they know about as possible. So if you know certain individuals with disabilities that are not necessarily getting DDS services and may not be, that you think or you're worried that won't fill out the census form, then I encourage you to share that information with them. But certainly, if we'll try to do that within our own chapters and spread that information and make sure that they're reaching out to people that they know that are living independently, but may be wary of anyone coming to their home to get information from them. So we want to, spread this information as widely as possible.
I didn't know if the department was going to do anything extra.
I don't know about DDS. We have not heard
Okay.
about any plans from the DDS, but that's a great question, and that's something that that I can follow up on. The ARC can follow up on that.
Yeah, and if you know of folks like that, you know, not only educating them beforehand, but say going, you know, visiting them or touching base with them in at the end of March or early April and say, hey, have you filled out your census? And can I, you know, show you, you're more than welcome to, you know, if they want to respond via phone, you can dial the number for them. You can direct them to the website, you know, and you can still, people can still help them. We just encourage you to actually fill out the census for them. So if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, so Randy chatted in that everybody's asking great questions and getting great answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
All right, how about anybody else? Anybody else with questions? You know, I'm excited to think about possible employment opportunities for people with disabilities to be a census taker. I mean, would, you know, some of our folks would perhaps need like a job coach to do that and that sort of thing. Would that be
so there is training involved. So the census will train all of their staff.
Okay.
I am not super familiar with all of the extra assistance, but you know, it's the federal government, so we employ everyone, and you know, people with disabilities should be more than welcome to apply and receive jobs. And it's really, the census is a little complicated in hiring in that we try to hire within the neighborhood, and we have different needs in every community. So some communities need more census takers than others. You know, we also have language requirements and things like that. So we can't say how many we need because it's an ongoing process.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There is some, I mean, there is some flexibility as far as like hours and things
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So they are part-time and flexible. Yeah, which makes it a great opportunity. So you can work nights, weekends, around a class schedule. Pretty much, we will be visiting homes between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So you can pretty much work, you know, say you can do 2 hours on Monday and 4 hours on Sunday or something like that. Then that's more than acceptable.
So, great, thank you. All right, how are we doing here? Any other questions for Ellen or Carly? Oh, wait a minute.
Hi, this is Nancy. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Hi, Nancy.
I just had a follow-up question to the one about DDS, and I was wondering if you know if they're taking a role in educating the nonprofits who run their services. And I'm thinking particularly because many of the staff who work in group homes are themselves immigrants and members of hard-to-count communities. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be an effort to encourage the staff to fill out their own census forms, because we don't want to miss them either.
Right. I don't know about DDS's role, but certainly, you know, every member of the ARC will be getting materials about training their staff. So, but I can't speak on, and it is something that we definitely want to follow up on. How much involvement has the DDS been as far as the census?
Fantastic.
But yeah, we'll certainly be making sure that is a priority for the ARC.
And I can't speak on the DDS behalf either, but in my role for the census and all of my colleagues, like I mentioned, there's about 28 of us in the state of Massachusetts. We have been working all throughout all the different communities, reaching out to community organizations and faith-based communities and things like that to really get the word out. And our goal is to find trusted voices within the community, because that's truly the most effective way to reach people and to help them understand why the census is so important. it's not very effective for a bunch of government employees to go around and tell everybody to do this. But if we can get people like yourselves who are trusted voices in the community to share this message and to continue to share this message, not just maybe with even your disabled community that you work with, but all of the community that you work with in your daily life, whether it's your church group or your bowling league or something, just sharing the message about the census, that it's safe, easy, and important, can really go a long way.
Great. All right. And then Melinda, how does the process of getting a job with the census work?
So folks need to apply online to that website that was in the slides, which you all will get. And then we are starting to hire now, and we'll be hiring all through April. It is a very, very complicated operation, and I don't even think our recruiting staff could give you exact answers, but essentially, if you get selected to work, they will call you, they will do a background check for every census employee, and then you'll have to do some, paperwork, and then they'll bring you on board, and it will involve some training. So for enumerators, it's about 2 days worth of classroom training, and then some at-home training, I believe it's about 15 hours worth. So it's all paid training. It might be a slightly lower pay rate than the work, but once you pass the training, you'll get the full pay rate. So I think in Middlesex County, where the pay rate is $27.50, you might get $25 an hour for training, and then bump up to that $27.50 once you've completed that. And then once you've completed the training, most people are on board for about 6 to 8 weeks, but it's always on an as-needed basis. So if you're the only eligible census taker that's hired in that area, you might be working for a bit longer, or and it also probably depends on how many hours everyone's available to work.
Okay, great. And where can folks find flyers that they can share?
So we have the 2 flyers that I described before from the ARC of US on our website, and then of course the Census Bureau has a ton of flyers as well.
Yeah. It's not an easy link, so I won't even say it because no one will remember. But
we have it. Yeah, we have it on our website.
Yeah, exactly.
ARC.
And if you're looking for something specific, feel free to reach out to me, and I can try to help you find something as well.
Same with me.
Terrific. All right. How about anybody else? Got a couple more minutes.
While we're waiting for any more questions, I'll also mention that children under 5 are the most undercounted population, and so just making sure that everyone on the line counts all of their kids and shares that information to get all their kids shared. This also, I think, is caused by maybe children in foster care. So if they may not be permanently placed with a family yet, but where else would they be counted? So they need to be counted wherever they're living and sleeping on April 1st, even if it's not their permanent residence. Or, say you have a niece or nephew staying with you, or they're staying with grandma and grandpa for a while, and they might not have a permanent residence, or they might not be staying there forever, but you need to always keep in mind where else would they be counted. So make sure and get them counted on that household form.
Terrific. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up. I want to thank both Carly and Ellen for a really informative webinar, and I'm excited to start spreading the word and having you all join us. You will get a copy of the PowerPoint emailed to you, and when the link is up on our YouTube channel, you'll get that as well. At the end of this, you're going to be rerouted to a brief 10-question webinar evaluation. We'd really appreciate your input because we want our webinar series to be a good one. So Anyways, thanks everyone for joining us today, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.